A Triad woman is working on building back her entire savings after it was wiped by a man she met online.
I must have had sucker written across my forehead. I withdrew $10,000 first, and then another one for $9,950.
All of Kathy Festa's savings.
I will never, ever forgive myself.
Gone, just like that. Bruno Kirschner got a hold of Kathy's mind and money. She met him on a dating app for singles over 50. The day they were supposed to meet, his daughter conveniently needed emergency surgery, but they kept in touch and even FaceTimed.
He was throwing out the L word, and that just sends me into a tailspin. It's like, oh no.
Kathy Festa had recently ended a long-term relationship. She was not in crisis. She was in transition, moving from one chapter of her life toward another, seeking what most people seek after prolonged partnership ends: someone to talk to, someone to share time with. The decision to join a dating app designed for adults over 50 was not reckless. It was targeted. She chose a platform that reflected her demographic, her intentions, her stage of life. The man who called himself Bruno Kirschner understood this environment precisely. He appeared on a platform where users self-select for seriousness, where the implicit promise is maturity, stability, and genuine interest in connection. His presence there was itself a credibility signal. The platform's age restriction suggested he had passed some threshold of legitimacy simply by being there. The first scheduled meeting never happened. His daughter required emergency surgery. The timing was not accidental. This delay is structurally important. A meeting would have exposed the fabrication. A cancellation, framed as family crisis, accomplished two objectives simultaneously. It prevented verification while generating sympathy. Kathy was not stood up. She was given a reason to wait, to understand, to demonstrate patience. The crisis positioned her as supportive rather than suspicious. They continued communicating. They FaceTimed. This detail matters. Video calls create the illusion of verification, a face attached to a voice, expressions that seem to confirm emotion. But FaceTime does not confirm identity. It confirms only that someone exists, that they are willing to be seen. The technology provided psychological reassurance without providing proof. He used what Kathy calls the L word, love. She describes her reaction precisely. That just sends me into a tailspin. She recognized her own vulnerability in that moment. The word triggered something: hope, longing, the desire to believe that connection was possible after the end of her previous relationship. The scammer identified this lever and applied pressure to it. Each interaction built on the previous one. The rhythm of communication created predictability, and predictability became a substitute for trust.
2 months later, the money request started. Bruno owned a company Kathy now knows never existed.
His company name is Zenith Renewable, and I looked them up on the internet, and there's no such thing.
But at the time, he said his money was tied up in England and he needed help paying his crew.
I took him as if he were telling me the truth, and I felt so bad for him.
He even wrote up a loan agreement between the two of them.
And that he would repay me. You think I got any money? Nope.
The money requests began after 2 months. This timing was not arbitrary. 2 months of daily communication, of FaceTime calls, of emotional escalation. By the time financial need entered the conversation, Kathy was not evaluating a stranger's request. She was responding to a partner's crisis. The framing was precise. Bruno owned a company, Zenith Renewable. The name suggested legitimacy, modernity, perhaps even environmental consciousness. His money was tied up in England. He needed to pay his crew. The request was not for a gift. It was for operational support, a temporary bridge until his funds cleared. The narrative positioned him as a businessman experiencing cash flow problems, not a predator extracting resources. Kathy looked up the company later. It did not exist. But in the moment, she had no reason to search. The story was plausible. International business involves complexity. Money moves slowly across borders. Crews require payment. Each element of the lie aligned with reasonable assumptions about how legitimate enterprises function. The process succeeded because it aligned with normal behavior. He even wrote a loan agreement. This detail reveals the sophistication of the manipulation. A loan agreement implies intention to repay. It creates a paper trail that suggests accountability. It transforms an extraction into a transaction, something with structure, with terms, with the appearance of mutual obligation. The document was worthless, but its existence provided psychological cover. Kathy was not giving money away. She was lending it with documentation to someone she trusted. She describes her emotional state clearly. "I felt so bad for him." The framing shifted the burden from skepticism to compassion. She was not being deceived. She was helping. The distinction allowed her to continue without confronting the possibility of fraud. The company never existed. The money in England was never tied up. The crew was never real. But by the time these facts became available, the transfers had already occurred. $10,000 first, then $9,950, all of her savings. The accumulation happened in 2 transactions, but the groundwork required 2 months of sustained performance.
Kathy says she'll never let her guard down again.
I'm sure he's laughing all the way to the bank, and whoever his next victim is, I just hope that they do not fall prey. Don't be gullible.
In these cases, there's not much law enforcement can do.
If they're using offshore accounts or if they're using voice over IP phone numbers, those can a lot of times be encrypted, which makes it extremely difficult when it comes to court orders and search warrants, actually tracking the true identity of the person behind that phone call.
Lieutenant Brad Hall with the Alamance County Sheriff's Office said they deal with about 250 scam reports a year. That number is growing because the profit outweighs the risk.
Do your absolute best to vet who you're talking to on the phone, because that person may not always be a legitimate person.
Lieutenant Hall's assessment is clinical but accurate. The profit outweighs the risk. Offshore accounts. Encrypted phone numbers. Voice over IP technology that dissolves identity into data packets routed through jurisdictions that do not cooperate with American warrants. The infrastructure of modern communication, designed for privacy and convenience, functions equally well for extraction and evasion. 250 scam reports per year in a single county. The number is growing. Each report represents someone who came forward, who overcame the shame of admission to file a complaint that will likely lead nowhere. The actual count is certainly higher. Many victims never report. They absorb the loss in silence, unable to articulate what happened without implicating their own judgment. Kathy Festa says she will never forgive herself. The phrase is not metaphor. She holds herself responsible for a crime committed against her. She uses the word sucker to describe her own face. She imagines the scammer laughing. These are the secondary injuries, the psychological residue that remains after the money is gone. She is rebuilding her savings. The process will take years. The man who called himself Bruno Kirschner has moved on. The dating app continues to operate. Somewhere, a profile awaits the next person seeking companionship after a long-term relationship ends. The loan agreement sits in a drawer or a folder, a document that promised repayment from someone who never existed, signed by a name attached to nothing.